Hello to GDQ submission judges. I am Manic Socratic, also occasionally known in real life as Adhan Inahosa. Um, but you can just call me Manic for the purpose of this recording. I am going to be delivering a different take on the speedrunning of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. I will acknowledge, yes, back at AGDQ, the any percent run definitely caused quite a stir and was a big crowd pleaser, but I decided the way that I've been approaching this game ever since it's been released is something a little bit different. I'm aiming to submit this run in a category that probably isn't terribly popular. I'm going no glitch on this one, so none of the major skips, just purely nothing but execution on the shortest path through this entire game. Which is my, kind of my philosophy for it. I know not everyone is fully perfectly appreciative or willing to put themselves through all the practice required to do the tricks required to do an 80% run of this game. So I'm like, well, what if we did a speed run without tricks? What if we just did a run that was just pure raw knowledge of the game? Which is what I wanted to be able to display here for you guys. So in standard speed running rules for this game, time starts when I confirm the OK here on the screen. So without further ado, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. So after having been shipwrecked in the opening cinematic, we awaken here in the house of Marin and Terran, who have taken me in and revived me. Unfortunately, we won't be able to spend much time looking at any of the speech bubble text here, so I've got to mash my way through as quickly as possible. But they are very relieved and also very happy to give me back my shield. So onward we go. Standard Zelda loadout is a sword and shield and builds from there. So now we have to head out hunting for the sword. And now that loading is unfortunately unavoidable as heck. It's just what this game does. I wish there were some way to speed that up, but there unfortunately is not. So we just kind of have to sit there and suck it up, really. Now there is a small movement optimization that happens right here. That comes with pushing these urchins in that you want to spend as little time as possible holding up the shield. Holding up the shield reduces Link's walking speed, and also of course pushing the urchin is slow as well. So the less time that can be spent in a slowed down state, the better. And that'll be one of many small movement optimizations to make sure that Link moves as quickly as possible, no matter what. And just gotta go start cruising through here. Gotta go head north to the mysterious woods. And cruising through Link's Awakening here on Switch has actually been really awesome, because if nothing else, anyone who ever loved this game back in the original Game Boy and Game Boy Color versions can pick up the Switch version and play it exactly as they remember it back in the day. Grezzo seemingly went to great lengths to preserve everything that you ever remembered about the original, left it exactly in place, and very carefully built a few new things on top of it. But if you don't want to do any of those new things, you can just stick to the original strategy and crush this game just the way you remember doing it when you were very young. So thankfully I was able to avoid a couple encounters and a couple of fights with those moblins there. However, it's a little problematic here whenever geese are involved, geese being the Legend of Zelda jargon for bats. And because they have incredibly random movement, and their incredibly random movement means they could very well knock me into a pit if they so desired. And I'm not willing to risk that, so when doing a marathon, you're always trying to look out for as many aspects of risk mitigation as possible. And including trying to not get stabbed by that moblin. That was a little gaffe on my part. normal strat right there is to hold up your shield really quick to put that moblin on his heels, and then you can just cruise right through. But that's okay. Didn't lose that much time. And maybe, just maybe, sometime during this run, I'll be able to get a couple small advantages to help make up time. And, well, just like I had warned, I got lost another little bit of time right there to Keith's knocking me into a hole because I was just a teensy bit careless about not defeating them. And let's see if I can be very fortunate and not engage these moblins. Great, I smoothly moved right through there. That electric enemy there can also be a bit of a problem. But we safely shepherded this mushroom over to the witch's house so that she can give us one of the most important items in the entire game, the magic powder. Has uses all throughout the game up to and including the final boss. Now, there is a rhyme and a reason as to why I'm picking up this magic powder. I did not specifically go to the one spot yet where the game basically tells me what I should be doing or hints at it. But we will find things out in a second here. Let's see, can I cruise by here as well? No. And yeah, let me get a couple hearts there. That's for the best. The only hearts I will actually be gathering are going to be the hearts that drop when defeating all the dungeon bosses. But you know, with enough practice, those are technically all the hearts that one could possibly need. So, in the short span of time that it took to go grab my sword, Terran right there somehow got himself turned into a raccoon, and the magic powder is what restores him back to his previous form. Thankfully, the magic powder does that to him because it doesn't do very nice things to all the other enemies in the game, and we get to use that to our advantage in quite a few spots, thankfully, especially while I'm here in the early stages of the game where I'm quite underpowered. So now I have technically met all the prerequisites to go into the first dungeon, but I will not be going into the first dungeon yet. I am going to be making a little pit stop back in Mabe or Mabe Village, depending on who you are and what you think of the word. Yeah, it's I've definitely heard both pronunciations of Mabe Village. It looks like it rhymes with the word babe, so I'll call it Mabe Village all I want. Now, here in the trendy game, this is where you start to notice that things are just a little bit different than you remember. Because back in the original Game Boy versions, you could mechanically perfectly manipulate the crane so that you could always, reliably, without fail, pick up the items that are set out here. Now that we are in 3D and we have actual physics, that's no longer the case. There is always a chance that you will drop whatever you intend on picking up here. So need just a second to focus here because it is essential to pick up the rupee off center. And I'll kind of tell you why here. If it starts spinning around like a rotisserie, then I've gotten a good pickup here. Ooh. Not my best pickup, but I still made it. I still made it as well as I could, and that's the biggest gift I could possibly ask for, is that the trendy game is only done in 2 crane drops. Because I need the Yoshi, and I need these rupees to keep my pockets right throughout the rest of the game, because there are some expensive items that I will be purchasing as part of this no glitch run. I've added some extra stipulations. First and foremost, all dungeons will be completed, especially because one of them has a very specific purpose, and to make sure that all of the things flow correctly, one must complete the trading sequence that's essential for getting some certain items in this game. So it's not quite 100% run, and it's not quite 80%. It's somewhere balanced in the middle. So that Yoshi doll got to be delivered to that sweet young mother there. to comfort her baby. And the end result of that was a hair bow, which for whatever reason this this Bow Wow really wants that bow. So I'm gonna get dog food in exchange for this. No idea why this Bow Wow thought that was a fair trade, because dogs are usually a bit on the hungry side, as we all know. But in any case, so I got to advance the trading sequence, and I got a decent amount of coin in my pocket. So now, finally, I can get myself over to the first dungeon. And hopefully without any Octoroks getting salty at my presence. Just opening the dungeon here. Can be time for donations. Got a good 15 seconds here. Okay, the first dungeon, the dungeon that teaches new players how to dungeon crawl, and this dungeon gets dealt with in two phases. The first phase before getting the crucial item from this dungeon, and the second phase being whatever happens after I get the crucial item. So I'm just making sure to pick up all the requisite small keys and other things I might need. And those mini Moldorms, I am very grateful that their movement patterns let me defeat them quickly so that I could snag these rupees. Every attempt is going to be made to keep my wallet right, because like I said a little earlier, there are some expensive purchases to be reckoned with in this game. First and foremost, after Dungeon 2, I'm going to have to pick up the shovel for 200 rupees. Then a little bit after that, I'm going to have to get the bow and arrow for 980 rupees. And after that, I'm going to have to pay Mamu the Frog 300 rupees so that I can learn a song. So with all of that in mind, it's a lot to deal with. And even taking damage, that is probably my best way of making it through this room in particular, just so I can be right on top of the stairs when they spawn. Cool thing about a lot of the dungeon rooms here in Link's Awakening is that they're incredibly deterministic. The enemy placement is always going to be the same when you enter them, so you can leverage that to have some specific movements planned out to be able to defeat enemies quickly and other activities as the game sees fit. So another cool thing that Link's Awakening does, as it this obviously was not in the original, the autosave feature tends to kick in after you pick up items. Now, similar to the original, for once. Whenever a save occurs here in Link's Awakening, the save does not count the exact position in which you were standing. The save counts for the last entrance that you pass through, and in our case, that would be the entrance of this dungeon. So it's a handy way to quote-unquote warp back. I won't say it's an intended mechanic, but it is also not a glitch either. So that keeps me kind of safe. So now with my two small keys, I just need to collect the boss key, also known as the Nightmare's key, and then defeat the dungeon's final boss. And that jumping over stairs is one of those other small movement optimizations that occurs throughout the run, because going up or down these stairs or ladders slows Link down. So the less that happens, the better. So all stairs will be treated with a leap. Okay, now I've yet to figure out the full rhyme or reason as to how to manipulate this boss in the correct way here, because I try to corner him the best I can and make sure that I can defeat him as quickly as possible. That wasn't the best, but also wasn't the worst fight I've ever had against him. But ideally, he gets stuck up there in the top right corner, and I can just completely keep slashing him, and it's almost a stun lock. They did their best to eliminate stun locking here in this game, but you can still sort of fudge your way into something resembling stun locking. Now here with Moldorm, Moldorm can be a tricky fight. He can be your best friend or he can be your worst nightmare. Just like he's kind of being right now with his thrashing around. That was actually incredibly close. Pretty decent fight. I've definitely had slightly better. I've definitely had worse. The last thing you want to happen is while he's thrashing about in his 10 to 12 seconds of iframes, the last thing you want is to get knocked down, and that just loses a ton of time. But we survived. I grabbed the heart, and now getting the first instrument, the full moon cello. A little bit of cutscene situation here, so donations can definitely be read. Just mashing my way through an owl conversation as usual. And while I am in this region of the map, it is essential that I make this stop here because once I leave this region of the map, I will not be coming back to this region of the map for the remainder of this run for the next 2.5 hours. Maybe I should have mentioned this earlier, that under ideal conditions, I've got this run well under 2 hours 40 minutes. But if I get a lot of bad luck, then maybe we're pushing 2 hours 45 minutes. Personal best is currently sitting at like a 2:32, I believe. I have a recorded run that has no commentary that was about 2:35, so if everything goes my way, if I have my execution dialed in, if my head's in the game, then the 2:30s is kind of to be expected. So now I have some bananas, and those bananas will not come into play until after the second dungeon, which I'm on my way to right now. I realize the game is a little bit loud. Hopefully I knocked the volume down just enough so that my voice balances well against the game. So, yeah, still nothing to do in the village, thankfully. Just gotta make my way up to a certain area, the Moblins hideout. That's almost on the way, almost in the same path to the witch's house, just slightly different. Yeah, so those frightened children there were telling me all about how Bow Wow got kidnapped, and we could briefly see Madame Meow Meow, utterly terrified and hopeless, standing in front of her house, fretting over the fate of her precious Bow Wow, the giant steel vicious animal that can kill anything in one bite. Clearly she sees a different side of Bow Wow than we do, and we're just gonna let her keep on believing that. So now I'm here in the Moblins hideout, usually a pretty straightforward kind of situation. Get to take advantage of the magic powder for one-hit kills against these Moblins. Every now and then you can get 2 at a time. There we go. Gonna get that 1 heart here because dealing with the Moblin King here can be quite problematic. Because they gave him some level of AI. He is just a touch smarter than he was back in the Game Boy versions. And that if you, while he's charging, if you go a little bit too far out of where you're supposed to be, he will put the brakes on and restart his attack cycle, which is definitely a big loss of time. Just like that, see? I got just out of range, and he didn't like that, so he put the brakes on. And that should do it. Now, hopefully, I'm going to get good Bow Wow. In the next room, I pick up Bow Wow. And if all goes well, he comes and meets me in the middle, and I don't have to go to the back of the room. There we go. Good Bow Wow. Most of the time, Bow Wow is good, but sometimes you got to go all the way to the back of the room. He just doesn't notice you for some reason. Might as well top up my hearts, and let's make our way to the second dungeon, shall we? A little bit more button mashing to make it through the owl. He only had like 2 or 3 lines of text, which makes that all the more frustrating of a pause. I wish there were a proven way to prevent the owl from speaking to us, but the owl speaking also advances the game's script. I always try to avoid this, but it happens anyway. Those little guys will find a way to grab onto you. Well, no, I can't dig yet, Bow Wow. I don't have the shovel yet. That's one of the cool things about Bow Wow, is how he has a pointed way of letting you know where you should be digging. And if you happen to remember those spots where to dig, then you'll find secret seashells there. I will not be picking up any secret seashells there, and that is the most aggressive I have ever seen Bow Wow. I did not know his chain could stretch that long. He's extra hungry tonight for some reason. He must feel something in the air. He must know that GDQ submissions are open, so he's being extra diligent for me. That's sweet Bow Wow. In any case, Level 2, Bottle Grotto, a mercifully linear dungeon. Really just kind of on cruise control here. There's really nothing in the way of backtracking that goes on here, just room by room. And sometimes these Stalfos guys really are evasive of your sword, no matter how well you're mashing the button. But that's okay. I kind of expect that. So just making sure that all the bollards are in place, and I've given up trying to dodge that Stalfos Knight as well, and I just defeat him as well. That was not smart of me, but anyway, I'll suffer those 3 to 5 seconds of time loss and move on like that didn't happen. Now, rooms like the one I'm about to enter are kind of interesting because there's a certain aspect that happens after you trigger the event that's intended for this room, in which case of this room is the stairs spawning in the corner. There's always that certain point where the game freezes Link in order for the game will freeze Link in order for the animation to happen, whether it be the chest spawning or the stairs appearing. Now, if you happen to jump as closely as possible to that trigger point, you can basically eke out a tiny bit more movement than you normally would have been able to get. So I consider that a little optimization as well, to be able to kind of try to time things out. And that might be the best ever Hinox fight I have ever had. Usually, for some reason, I just have this weird mental block where I fail that room completely, and I'm gonna try to not get cocky right now because of how good that fight was. Like, I'm usually burning 30 seconds in that room. It's kind of embarrassing, but that was pretty good. So here we have yet another deterministic room where enemy placement is known, and you can quickly optimize your movements to make sure that you're in the right place when the chest spawns, as it thankfully only takes one sword swipe to kill those ghosts. Alright, so moving on, gotta make sure to always kill the keys before they find ways to ruin your run and make my pockets right. Power Bracelet adds yet another dimension to the game, not necessarily speed-wise, but absolutely opens things up. And I need this one last small key in order to be able to clear the dungeon. And, of course, I still need to grab the boss key, which is in a very interesting room coming up here in just a second. So, enemies in this room must be defeated in a specific sequence, and for a lot of casual players, it's actually a it can actually get a little problematic. Because you'll clear the enemies out in this in this room, and even though if you happen to have picked up the compass, even if you picked up the compass, no key will appear. Even if you defeated keys in the room, it just seems like a normal room where you defeat enemies and then you get the reward. Elsewhere in this dungeon is a little hint thing. There's a mechanic in this game where you pick up stone beaks and you find stone owls that reside throughout. There's one in each dungeon, and if you happen to get the hint for this dungeon, it of course needs to speak to you in Zelda jargon, where it tells you something to the effect of, to receive the key, first defeat the imprisoned Pole's Voice, last Stalfos. Now, to many players, that just doesn't even make sense. What's a Pole's Voice? What's a Stalfos? But yeah, the imprisoned Pole's Voice. I mean, the descriptions are kind of supposed to be the hint. Imprisoned. It doesn't exactly look like a jail or prison or anything like that, but that is indeed what a Pole's Voice is, the little bunny dudes. Now there's a small optimization in this room before the boss that I did not take because I'm down to 2 hearts, and I'd rather not risk dying here, especially because I don't have the safety net yet. But Genie is a tedious fight because, unfortunately, he's got 2 phases, and each of these phases, your opportunity to damage him in any meaningful way is very well spaced out, having to wait for him to juggle and then to toss all 8 fireballs. And because he will always keep a certain distance away from you, there's no way to optimize your movements or your position in a way that Genie will throw the fireballs in a way that they'll evaporate faster. They will almost always travel the length that they're intended. Okay, so with this 3rd throw, so ends the first phase, and now this is where things get really interesting, and this is all about reaction time here. And the way that you tell which Genie is going to be the one that appears after roughly 2.5 revolutions here is the one that rotates just a little bit wider from center than the other, thankfully. So I 2-cycled him. That's probably as good as I could ask for. And that's also kind of another neat thing to exploit with Genie, is that Genie doesn't actually have iframes until he has completely vanished. So you can keep whacking him with your sword all the way until he's vanished. You can just keep going, and that's how I got the 2-cycle. So time for donations. And so, just as another way of making sure my pockets stay right, I had to go run right back in and grab those 50 rupees that are sitting there. And what I'm about to do here is reveal the most important thing in this run. And that is one of the warp points that they added into this game. Whereas back in the Game Boy Originals, there were 4 warp points in strategic locations throughout the island. Now there are a couple more hidden under rocks. Pretty neat. And that right there, Crazy Tracy's Special Ointment, is the safety net of this game. Back when this was the 4th ever Zelda game to be made, they hadn't fully established the role of fairies and other such healing items. So this is it. This is the one. This is the one that you get. While fairies do exist in this game, they do not work in the way that we've become accustomed to from Ocarina of Time onwards. So yeah, your only hope, if your hearts run out, to resurrect on the fly is to make sure that you get Crazy Tracy's potion. And now my pockets are definitely right, so I can return Bow Wow and move on with this quest. I can make my first big boy purchase by getting a shovel. And now she gives me a kiss. If my hearts were any lower, they would be refilled. And it was a blink if you miss it kind of moment, but Link's face was a little bit flushed there. It was really adorable. Okay, so this is where things start to kind of diverge a lot from some of the other any % runs, because I'm not tricking that fox into following me. I'm doing this straight up here. So since I have the coin, I'm going to max out my bombs here, and bomb management is going to be essential throughout the run, especially in about dungeons 5 and 6. So thankfully I was able to max out my bomb supply right here. And as is true for many other marathon type speed runs, is that usually the first half of the run for big games like this, the first half is just setup after setup after setup. You're kind of doing a slow build of the tsunami that will eventually occur. I'm putting all the pieces in place that will benefit me greatly, and also not dying would be important here. So I can move these in the correct directions. Okay, so now I get to engage in the color dungeon here. Hopefully I can pick up some health here in a little bit. The color dungeon may not seem like anything special to us right now, but back in the Game Boy days, it really was something incredible, because the original Game Boy version obviously didn't really have anything in the way of color. And then this dungeon was introduced back in the Game Boy Color remake in 1998. And for those with sharp ears who are able to hear over my jabbering, this dungeon features a remix of the original dungeon music from the very first Legend of Zelda. And hopefully I can get a heart or two from some of these enemies. That would be nice. But the color dungeon ends up being special because it imparts a particular power-up for Link at the very end. You can choose the blue tunic or the red tunic. The blue tunic increases your defense. The red tunic increases your offense. And for the sake of many, many things coming down the pipe, I'm choosing offense. Definitely have to be able to slay enemies quicker and slay bosses quicker so that I can get through some tough parts of this game a little bit faster. So while I am indeed spending 5 to 6.5 minutes in this dungeon, it's okay because it really speeds up things later on in the dungeon that end up being problematic and tedious if one were running around with a weaker sword. Oh, one more. There we go. Okay, it was a little bit scary being that I was low on health, but that's fine. I can at least now grab the boss key. And let's move on into this dungeon, where this dungeon will almost immediately present me with another mid-boss, which does give me trouble, so I just hope I can stay on my toes and execute well against this guy, because he's just tedious and has a lot of iframes and prevents you from attacking him a lot. Yeah, he's very angry at my presence for some reason. Okay, those boulders fell in a very favorable pattern, so that was maybe one of the best fights I've ever had against that guy. Okay, so next, gotta go get one more small key, and it's in a room that can make me or break me. Not my greatest time in this room, but you know, just gotta grit it out sometimes. And at the very least, I can be standing in the place where I need to be when the key drops. And you know what? I'm gonna leverage that piece of power here, because my next stop is the final boss, and hopefully everything works out. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If anyone knows how to clear that puzzle in fewer than 4 moves, please let me know. Always more helpful to throw bombs, because they detonate slightly faster that way. And let's see if I can dust off this boss rather quickly. All you got to do is just really be aggressive on him, and that'll be the end of it. There we go. Pretty decent fight. So let's heal up, and let's get that red tunic so I can be mighty powerful. And we'll get out of here. Powerful red mail. Yes. A little bit of cutscene action. Donation time. So 3 out of, well, I guess what's technically 10 dungeons in 36 minutes. Not too shabby, huh? That ratio won't be as nice going forward, but hey, gotta take the victories where I can get them, you know. So now comes the long-winded quest for Dungeon 3, and there is a heck of a story behind what goes on with Dungeon 3, because Dungeon 3 is one of those opportunities the developers took to flex on us in a narrative sense. Thankfully, because I got those bananas earlier from the alligator, I can talk to this monkey with confidence. Yes, monkey has built me a bridge. I get a backdoor bridge to the castle and a bonus leftover stick for a bunch of bananas. I gotta say, I came out the winner in this one. Now, back in the original Game Boy version, the stick wasn't forced on you like this. It was sitting there in the middle of the bridge because the game kind of assumed monkeys built the bridge for you. You would immediately walk over the bridge, and I guess maybe there were issues with people just leaving the stick behind, not collecting it, going off somewhere else. Who knows? In any case, they saw it best as a little bit of a shortcut of sorts to just give you the stick like that. And I was able to get the Goomba swag bounce, thankfully. Just a little bit of pause gives me a slick little movement optimization there. And I'm going to use my powerful red mail to defeat a lot of these problematic enemies in one hit, which greatly saves me time and frustration here. So that's 1 out of 5 golden leaves that I have to return to an NPC once I'm done tooling about the castle here. And always got to keep my pockets right because my next financial goal is nearly 1,000 rupees. So every little bit counts. And yet, only 3 sword swipes to be able to get the golden leaf here versus having to possibly do up to 5, which would be incredibly infuriating. And I'll just dance by those 2 guards there. No big deal. And that's another nice benefit of having this powered up sword, is that those little red guys no longer split into 2 when slashed. They just go straight to being defeated, which is a big help in the grand scheme of things. And now this is one of those other little quality of life optimizations made here in the remake, in that back in the original, there was no handy view outside of the castle. The screen shook, and then it said, it sounded like a door open, and then that's it. Nothing nice and beneficial, like a cutscene to show you what exactly happened. So, alright, we are now at 4 out of 5 leaves. I am down to 2 hearts because I have been a little bit reckless, and that golden knight right there is holding the final leaf, so oh man, this is going to be a little bit stressful because I really would appreciate not wasting Tracy's ointment. There we go. I'll recover hearts along the way. It's all right. But I got the 5 golden leaves, and now I can go talk to a certain NPC who has a shocking history with Nintendo. Normally, people might think if you're playing casually, it might seem like you have to talk to this NPC first in order to trigger the castle quest, but thankfully that's not the case. You can just go immediately do the castle. So entering Richard's villa, so I can hand him his golden leaves immediately. Now, Richard is, for people who are big fans of not just Game Boy games, but Japanese Game Boy games, he appeared in a Nintendo-made Japanese exclusive game called roughly For Whom the Frog Tolls, something like that. I'm not 100% sure on the translation, but in any case, that character, that music, that character and that music appeared in that game, so that's one of those handy little throwbacks for real fans. And if you were actually to go play that game, or at least look at some screenshots, you'll find that because it's Nintendo and that game shared a lot of the same staff with Link's Awakening, they both use the same font for their text, which I think is really cute. So now I finally have the Dungeon 3 key. Definitely losing out on my ratio here. That boulder right there gets bypassed by one of the main glitches in the 80% category. So Dungeon 3 open, we can now dive in, and I'm just going to be hoofing it over there, so now's a decent time to read donations, because I'm not doing anything special here for the next 30-45 seconds. Well, that room went rather quickly. I'm pleased at how that turned out. So Dungeon 3, there is a lot of completely extraneous stuff in this dungeon. First and foremost, that treasure chest right there, which I'm not going to be picking up. But the entire core of this dungeon involves around gathering 4 small keys all at once, and the way that this dungeon flows is a confusing obstacle towards achieving that goal. So if one eventually is familiar with the dungeon, they don't have to worry at all about possibly wasting, not so much wasting keys, but wasting time spent in rooms that don't technically advance you towards the end. And this dungeon also contains the weirdest iteration of the Dodongo to date. Cannot be killed with a sword, of course, because Dodongo dislikes smoke. These guys got a little bit of a tweak in their AI. They still they thankfully are much better at sucking in bombs than they were back in the Game Boy originals, but they now have iframes in the form of 4 movements in which they will not open their mouth. So you have to watch carefully and count their movements a little bit to make sure that you're dropping bombs as quickly as possible, so that they're not just moving around without a bomb inside of them. So that went fairly well, I think. So now it's time to really put the speed in speedrun by getting the Pegasus boots. Pegasus boots get their own dedicated button, whereas once a long time ago they did not get their own dedicated button. They had to be equipped like an item, and it's one of those little quality of life things that turns out to be really nice. And I love the little pitter-patter of Link's feet that they added here. It's the cute little touches in the presentation that make this iteration so good. Truly lived up to the cheeky, childish spirit that I think the original one was trying to go for. I mean, the original Link's Awakening was a cheeky side project by a couple programmers who were working on A Link to the Past. So that kind of cheeky rebelliousness totally oozes out of all of this game. And well, I got them to chain reaction each other. Not as quickly as I'd hoped, but I got a chain reaction nonetheless, so I'll take it. Okay, so that is 2. And that's another nice thing that happened here in the remake, is that you have it is a small but nonetheless present means of controlling Link while he is dashing. Back in the original, he would just run in straight lines. It's kind of so you had to be really careful. Now they tweaked the mechanics so that it's actually a lot nicer. So that's 3 keys down. Where is the 4th key hiding, you might wonder? Well, it is hiding near the entrance of the dungeon, and since I defeated the mid-boss, I can just warp over, no big deal. Okay, I was hoping not to bonk, but I bonked. Better a bonk than overcorrecting and falling down. And another thing that I'm going to do here while I'm in this region of the dungeon, since I now have the ability to do so, is I'm going to collect a fat cash prize as a reward for remembering things. There we go. Those two like to separate very quickly, so I'm glad they stayed together long enough for me to spin slash them like that. And that's a grand 300 rupees, which goes a very long way towards helping me get to the nearly 1,000 rupees required to get the bow and arrow a little bit later. Alright, so now that I've got 4 small keys, let's wrap up this dungeon. Another thing I could probably speak towards when it comes to speedrunning Zelda games, I know the original Legend of Zelda. I think Zelda 2 does it a little bit. I know that any percent runners do it for this game. I'm pretty sure Link to the Past has it as well. But the game keeps a hidden counter that is relevant towards the way that items will spawn. And that's another kind of thing, another, I don't know, I guess you could maybe call it risk mitigation factor, is that I'm, because I got the red tunic, usually the kill counter is used as a manipulation to make sure that you get a piece of power here in Link's Awakening. I don't have to worry about kill counts. I can just play in a rather loose fashion because I already have a powerful sword and I don't have to worry about things too much. Alright. So now, gotta be careful and dodge things here. Okay. Not too shabby. I've had better fights. I've had worse fights. I'll take it. One more heart, and now the instrument. So definitely time to read some. Time to read some donations. Okay, so having the Pegasus boots and the red tunic, I've just got a world of possibilities open to me now, and I can't wait to start tearing into some things here. Actually, first and foremost, I need to head towards Mabe Village because there is an essential item hiding over here that is going to guide the rest of the game. Now, one may think that musical instruments being influential in Zelda is kind of a time-honored thing, but the most important thing, most important instrument in all of Zelda, we could all, arguably agree upon, is the ocarina, which, for many, they came to be surprised that the first appearance of the ocarina in Zelda was not in Ocarina of Time. It was right here in Link's Awakening all along. And just gotta plow through those guys. And while I have the chance, Get a little bit more money. Very good. And with this ocarina that I'm plucking out of a dream world, I will learn 3 songs throughout the rest of the run that will help to guide me. So let's keep it moving. And now that I'm out of this part, it's down to a few more setups here because I've got to talk to a few more NPCs to set some things up, and then do some more back and forth weirdness. It's a touch on the frustrating side, but you know, that's just part of marathon runs. So I guess if more donations need to be read, I'm just going to be hammering through some boring stuff here. Please, by all means, go ahead. So this is me just advancing the trading sequence here as part of what I need to do next for the 4th dungeon. There's a big bear that needs a honeycomb. Imagine that, a bear liking honey. At least something makes sense in this crazy dream. And I know it might look kind of awkward sometimes with the way that I sword slash while I run. That is actually yet another movement optimization that, especially when I was in that little cave, in lieu of bonking, I use a sword slash to cancel the running, so that I don't waste time bonking on a wall or bonking on other surfaces. Lets me maintain control of my own movements, basically. Go figure, as soon as I talk about being anti-bonk, I bonk twice. That's fine. This is still in the setup part, and this is the second most important warp point, is to uncover that, because that will be incredibly useful in just a minute or two here, actually. As soon as I get over to the animal village. Just gotta cross down here, no big deal. And there is a little bit of movement optimization down there to make sure that my sprinting doesn't cause a bonk, and that I still have the ability to build up a run for the sake of crashing through that weird object, that weird inflatable bubble. Super tough bubble rubber thing. Oh my, honeycomb. That's a great way to greet a bear. And he's just got a pineapple for me. Yet again, continuing the tradition of giant animals having uncharacteristic food items with them. Big alligator with bananas, now big bear with a pineapple, of all things. And all of this now conveniently puts me right next to another warp point, which I will then leverage to come right over here as a fast way of getting over to Marin. She is hiding over on the beach, and we're about to have a touching, romantic, private moment with each other. Gotta get that money, though. Sitting at a nice, pretty 685. Yes, I will sit and talk with you for a while, Marin. That would be lovely. And I'm going to be mashing through this, unfortunately, in the interest of time, but suffice it to say, Marin is sitting here wishing telling all of her deepest dreams and thoughts and wishes, talking about how she wishes to the windfish. The windfish is a god in, basically a god in Koholint society. She wishes to the windfish that she could become a seagull and fly across to the other ends of the ocean, so that she could finally see what's out there. A lot of the inhabitants of Koholint Island think that the island is all there is. So, but she thinks there's more, and it's important that she explore that. And so I had to assure her that yes, I was listening to what she was saying, and then I got to silently tell her that there's a big walrus blocking my path, and she gets to be the helping hand to help me get that 4th dungeon key. And look at those hops. That lady, she doesn't even have any special items. She just made that leap without hesitation. You gotta love her for that. All right. We shall give him a little surprise. Oh, and one of the animal villagers is calling her because they want to use her as free entertainment. Go figure. Okay, so I have to defeat a mini-boss in order to get this sacred key here. And hopefully I knock him down in just a few, maybe 3 or 4 spin slashes, and hopefully I don't fall down the hole in the center either, because that would be disastrous. I am playing this a little bit safe so I don't fall down the hole and lose even more time. I'd rather do it like this than to risk falling down that hole. All right. And then I have to make sure that the key doesn't fall down the hole. Alright. So far, so good. Okay. Normally falling down that hole can introduce one to some interesting items, but those are not going to be picked up. Alright, now finally, after all of this all this terrible fighting, all of this violence, we finally get to have our first use of the ocarina. Yet another tender touching moment with Marin. Yes, it is sticking in my mind. Pinky swear, promise, let's go. Don't ever forget the song or her. I made a promise, you see. So now I get to start leveraging the elaborate collection of warp points that I've created by going all the way up here to the warp point near Dampé's shack. Now, Dampé is definitely a retroactive inclusion here to Link's Awakening. He was never really a thing. I mean, he obviously didn't appear until after Link's Awakening in Ocarina of Time. So he's the only other true Zelda-verse character, the only other person from Hyrule to show up in this game. And that if you are interested in entertaining the entertaining the custom dungeon creator. Well, custom in a very loose sense of the word, but he is the one who manages it. And now with that key, I can stop the waterfall. Oh, what kind of talented locksmith rigged that up? Alright, Dungeon 4 entrance is open, but how to get there quickly? What I also get to do here is open up what's probably the third most important warp point in the game, because it will be leveraged towards the very end of the run. Very important for me to hit that after the path that I'm eventually going to take. But as I must serve the trading quest, coming this way is also essential. And it gets me a little bit more money too, so that doesn't hurt either. Sorry, Keese, gotta destroy you. And one must be very careful around the loading points, the capture points for any stairs, because they will pull you back like that without mercy. But we do have, if all goes well, about an hour and a half left in this run. So, just going through some tedious spots right now. If donations must be read, then got a few seconds here. We can see Papal waving at us, and just gotta drift through this cave real quick. So yet again, in service of the trading quest, nothing seems to make sense. Give a pineapple, get a hibiscus of all flowers. Okay, sure thing, Papal. That's just all he had on hand, and that's what gets to be our thing to ponder on our way into Dungeon 4. Now, standard speedrun procedure in Dungeon 4 is to split it in half to complete the second half later, and that's definitely what's going to be happening here, because there are certainly some things that I must leverage by splitting the dungeon in half. In an any percent run, most people would have stolen the bow and arrow by now, which would have allowed for quite a few certain skips. But keeping it honest here, buying everything that I need, no stealing. You're not gonna have the shopkeeper mad at me. Oh yeah. Got the swag powder there by killing both of those bubbles at once before getting the small key. Doing my best to not get cocky here, to say the least. That chest that I just skipped past has the dungeon map. No need to get that. What I think is important in speedrunning is how it's not important to just know where to go. It's also important to know where not to go. I know it seems kind of like some weird, crazy psychobabble, but it really does add up so that you can have some more risk mitigation, and in the case of marathons, not wander down paths that might rob you of time. Oh, cutest drowning ever. And at least those striders there decided to move in a way that kind of benefited me for killing them. It's okay. That was terrible. You don't deserve that. My apologies. So, just dungeon cruising here, no big deal. But this dungeon is a little bit awkward because I have to take a very specific path. This dungeon makes you take a very weird backtracking, forcing path in order to be able to get the keys that you need in order to advance. It's kind of frustrating. And it's important to not kill those two enemies because they invoke a small cutscene and a small key that I do not need. And this is, at least for me, the most efficient way that I've found to defeat this boss. There is a very tiny window after his bum touches the ground, but before he starts moving, where he's quite vulnerable to a spin slash. So, in the name of, yet again, mitigating as much risk as possible, that's how I want to take that mid-boss. Now, I'll just cruise through here and grab the item that really opens this game up, the flippers. And with the flippers, what I can now do, just as the rest of the game likes to go, I can leverage the auto-saving feature to get back to the very beginning of the dungeon. And now it's time to leave the fourth dungeon alone for a while. We're just going to let it simmer. We're just going to let it be on low heat for a while and wait for us until we come back to it as the very last thing we do before encountering the final boss. So now here's definitely a time sink of about a minute to learn Monbo's Mambo. Okay, so while I have not glitched the game, I have created a sort of a sequence break, and I have to be incredibly careful to not warp to Mondo's Pond because that triggers a certain event that I have no interest in, participating in. It's a really sweet piece of narrative, but it's not for a speedrun. Okay, so. And that's one of the other cool parts of doing the setups earlier, is that warp point puts us right next to the fifth dungeon, which will be completed in its entirety. And I personally, this is my favorite dungeon. I really have the most fun zipping through this dungeon and trying to better myself with every big enemy encounter. Just in a pure kind of philosophical way of going about speedruns like this, is it, and especially when presenting a game in the format of something like GDQ, it's perhaps not for the best to assume, just because a game is popular doesn't mean you want to assume that the audience knows all about the game, because yes, we're all a lot of gamers, but we cannot guarantee that everyone has played every game to completion. So being able to kind of explain the game and kind of address the significance of why something is an optimization is important, I think. So instead of just being like, oh yeah, here's this trick, I can say, you know, this is what's intended, and this is what should normally be happening, and here's why this is a really cool situation happening here. Just kind of my 2 cents for how, I mean, obviously it's not my job to tell GDQ how to present games, but I always feel it's for the best to just never assume that the audience has played a game before, and to always present it with as much information and context as possible. Probably helpful for everyone involved. Okay, now So starts one of 4 encounters with this enemy here. This guy, Master Skull, really does not like me because I'm after his lucky charm. I'm after his hook shot. And as part of the strategy there to make things easier on me, I'm not sure if you can do this with the regular sword. I haven't honestly tried, but I believe at least in the original, you have to, in order to stun him, you have to hit him with a spin slash. If you have the regular sword. Since I'm powered up, I just use a regular sword slash to stun him, and that lets me lay a bomb faster, or sooner rather. And I definitely jumped the gun on myself there. And I would do well to try to not blow myself up in the process here. That's 2 of 4. I know the if this were an any percent run, it would be done by now, but here I am only halfway through the game, basically. Okay, 3rd encounter out of 4. And thankfully, it's not an item grab, but that is an action that invokes an autosave, so I can now zip back for the 4th encounter with Master Skull. So let's do it. Okay, and I have 16 bombs, doing very well in that aspect. Alright. Decent fight, decent fight. And now we finally have the hook shot, which, yet again, opens up a lot more awesome stuff in the game. So now let me zip back to the start of the dungeon so I can get myself cleared of those tedious rooms. And that chest up there has a lot of money in it, so I'm definitely going to start taking advantage of my hook shot and make my pockets overflowing to get that bow and arrow. It's all I've ever wanted for Christmas, that bow and arrow. 857, not too shabby. Okay, so now that I've got the hook shot, the next objective is, of course, to make sure that I get to the boss. Now, because I'm not going to be doing any sort of position manipulation, I'm going to be grabbing the small key that is required. I'm going to be well, I won't say it's specifically required, but I'm going to be grabbing the small key that will help me make a step towards the boss dungeon. So just picking up a lot of the goodies along the way. I should really stop over and pick up those bombs. I should have done that a minute ago, but that's okay. Okay, a little bit more money in a really good place. And just going to quickly, just grab and go, thief in the night. And now to grab the final boss key over here. Dealing with a very dangerous room. Two very dangerous rooms. Oh, goody, a heart. And a little whoop, little swag zip there. Tiny optimization, I'll take it. Every little bit counts. They all add up in the end. And I think I will grab that heart on principle just to stay in the safe zone, because the final boss of this dungeon is a doozy, to say the least. I have only a 25% chance of getting a good pattern with the boss of this dungeon, so I'm gonna try to give myself as many advantages as I possibly can. So over here we go, and some of these cheap down here can be, well, cheap by jumping up and interrupting runs and whatnot. Very frustrating to deal with sometimes. And oof, okay. Well, at least I have Crazy Tracy's potion to back me up in case this boss fight gets out of hand. So we'll see if I get good luck. I mean, I got good Bow Wow earlier, so the least I could do is maybe since this game is treating me so nicely, I can get the good boss pattern as well, because this dude is super tricky. Maybe one of the most frustrating bosses that can make or break the pace of a run, because what ends up happening with this boss, he's gonna punch a hole in all four, basically the four corners of the room. Then he's punching open the center of the room like this, where his tail is gonna spin, first and foremost, counterclockwise circles. And I can only really super hope that Slime Eel is going to first pop out of the bottom left. Not too bad. That's 5, 6. Okay, I just need 2 more hits to defeat him. Okay, and I'm about to get them. So, not the best pattern, not the worst pattern. But just based on, in terms of risk mitigation, based on where his tail goes, being at the top left of the room is statistically the safest place to be. And if I weren't standing in the top left of that ring in the middle, then the heart would have spawned where I was standing. But of course, the game can't just give me everything I want. Anyway, time for donations. Okay, now that I have the hook shot, I now have all the requisite items to complete the trading quest, which is going to happen right now. I should have remembered to do this, so let's warp to the nearest place, which will help to continue the trading quest. And with my hibiscus, that means getting right back over to Animal Village. I'm going to have to do some major crisscrossing of the land in order to finish this trading quest, but there will be some interesting bits that are revealed as we go on here. Ooh, so close to hitting it right in there. Sweet Goat loves my hibiscus, and she wants me to take a letter to Mr. Wright, who happens to be living in a little shack that we passed about an hour ago. Let's see. So now, actually, let me go bust this out here. And gonna go yet again back to the most important warp in the entire game, Danpe's shack. And let's run as much as possible. And I'll reiterate, I am deathly terrified of accidentally warping to Mambo's Pond or ending up in the general vicinity because it forces a quest upon me that will cost me 2 minutes. And yeah, in a run that's already this long, I don't want to make it any longer than it has to be. So I'm going to continue getting pockets right, and now that I'm over 1,000 rupees, I can now get the bow and arrow. Right on target. Coordinated my money well. Because sometimes there's a little cave here behind Mr. Wright's house that I have to go to for money, but no, we are right on financial schedule here. So this is going to be a blink and if you miss it kind of thing. Watch the screen incredibly carefully as he opens this letter from his dear love pen pal, who happens to have sent him a picture of Princess Peach. Yeah, it was 1993, and Link's Awakening basically invented catfishing. We'll leave it at that. So, next thing to do, let's go get that bow and arrow that we've been saving up our pennies for. The Akuku Prairie Warp puts me right next to that. Okay, back to the shop. We don't want the shopkeeper to blast us to smithereens. We want to give him the money he's due. So 980 rupees, so it shall be. Oof. You know what? Might as well top out bombs as well. Just out of general paranoia while I have the money. Because my next major purchase is 300 rupees that will happen immediately after the 6th dungeon. And thankfully, the 6th dungeon has a 300 rupee pickup. So now that I have the bow and arrow and I have the broom, I get to head back to Animal Village because the next part of the trading sequence is to give the broom to dear sweet grandma, who was so busy sweeping the entire island that she wore her old broom down to a nub. So she doesn't have any purpose in life right now. She really, really needs a broom to lift her spirits. She's so happy. So happy. Okay, so let's move onward because when she was doing all that furious sweeping, she found herself a fisherman's hook down by the bay. We get to go put this hook to good use by talking to this fisherman who's hiding conveniently under this bridge in a spot that doesn't even really look like a door or anything, but you just have to kind of surmise it in a way, I guess. One of those kind of weird holdovers from this game being old is that some things just are not obvious and are really tedious. But that's okay. We got our pearl necklace. Who needs this pearl necklace? Well, we'll find out shortly. That's a really neat little thing right there. If you do a leaping jump off the edge of the boat, it drops you right into the loading zone to exit that screen. So really efficient little move one can make. As it turns out, they drastically changed Pegasus Boot's behavior from the originals to this one. It's kind of a long story to explain. Back when you had the Pegasus boots in the Game Boy versions, you could essentially interrupt it with whatever other action you wanted to, be it a sword swipe, a jump. It was interruptible. Now, not so much. The Pegasus boots animation locks you in, and as long as you're holding L, no other inputs actually matter. So that can be leveraged to start rapidly mashing the Y button where I have the Rock's Feather equipped, so that you can jump basically immediately as soon as the run starts. It doesn't have to be frame perfect. You just have to be really quick on your button mashing, and you can make sure that you get a full flying leap from exactly where you're standing. So now that I have the magnifying lens, I've gotten that out of the way. The magnifying lens will help me a little bit later on the road to Dungeon 8. So now I can do a nice little quickie warp back over to Animal Village, so that I can start my journey a little bit north, a little bit east, to get the key for the 6th dungeon. And I gotta warn you right now, 6th dungeon, it's a doozy. It really is a no mercy kind of dungeon. Even with tricks and skips, that dungeon still takes its toll on runners. And just cruising my way through this maze as quickly as possible, so if you need to read some donations, that's completely fine. So we got an annoying mini-boss standing in between us and the 6th dungeon key. Oh boy. One more hit. It's almost like that armor is a vessel for some sort of evil spiritual energy inside of it. I wonder where we've seen that before. And let's get out of this maze the quick way so that we can get over to the entrance of the 6th dungeon by, yet again, warping to the Animal Village. Yeah, I'd much rather do it this way than put up with getting out of the maze. Whether it's faster to do it this way, kind of debatable, even though I've set myself back pretty far. But this just, it feels right to me. So I can just pop in the water right here and start cruising. Oh, come on. It jumped out right as I was hook shotting over it. How cruel. So, let's get this key in and let's get this nightmare, no pun intended, dungeon over with. This dungeon comes in 2 parts, going up the left path and then going off the right path. So, let's just rock it the best we can here. Beautifully remixed music happening here in this remaster of the game. By the way, much more ambient compared to what it used to be back in the day. Actually, because I have to go like that. Yeah, that'll do. And then I can. Boop. That works nicely. Yeah, it is a luxury for speedrunning to have bomb arrows. Being able to blow up walls from across the room, so good. Oops. That was poor item management on my side of things. That's okay, just gotta recover. Oh, all in one hit. That's a rarity, especially considering how random Moldorm is. Okay, power bracelet. And now I can, believe I can put away those things for now. Let me get back on the hook shot. Item management is key here for being able to navigate certain rooms with quickness for sure. And especially bollard management here in this room as well. And sometimes you just got to take the hit. I threw that too soon. There we go. And I don't need to go up in that room, but I do need to hit this, and I'm hoping I can pull off the bomb arrow trick to get this small key here in the next room. Oh, botched it. Yeah, there's like a quarter-second window of opportunity to be able to bomb arrow that bubble right there and get those wizrobes dealt with in one shot. So, small key grab. Let's head down the right side path of the dungeon here. Going back to the favorite Rock's Feather and Hookshot. Now, rooms like this, there are a handful of them forced upon you in the rest of the game. These rooms actually go faster here in the remake because these tiles now no longer have any iframes whatsoever. You can start swiping on them immediately when they start animating, and they will be they'll be defeated. When back in the original, when the tiles were spinning, they had iframes, and it was super frustrating. Okay, good pickups, good pickups. That's one small key. Now for some more shenanigans as quickly as I possibly can. And there is a mid-boss coming up here in just a second. There he is. One of the most irritating mid-bosses of them all because he's incredibly chaotic. Though what I can say, whenever he picks up the ball, he pops around at least 4 times, 4 hops before throwing it. So that's an automatic time waste, basically. So you want him to hold on to it for the least possible amount of time. And down we get to go here. Crisscrossing this room quickly, and now we have more spinning tiles. Spinning tiles that reveal bottomless pits for even more danger. And after a certain point, you just kind of want to stand in one safe spot and keep swiping so that you don't have to deal with this stuff anymore. Oh, man. Okay, 2 small keys is exactly where we need to be. So I can burn one immediately. Now, this next room is very likely to frustrate a lot of casual players, but do not fear. There is a way to game this. There is a specific algorithm by which these chess pieces, these horse heads, operate, and it entirely involves being exactly on the seam, 2 tiles over horizontally and 1 vertically. Being on that seam will help you hit the sweet spot every time. Pinky swear. And, true to the original, play a song, and the Pole's voices vanish immediately. It's quite lovely. On the Famicom version of the original Legend of Zelda, you had to yell into the microphone on the second controller in order to get that effect going. Now, this is the room that's probably going to burn a bit of my time so I can get that 300 rupee pickup that I so desired. And I'm totally shooting myself in the foot here, but that's okay. Let's get my pockets right. And now I have to lower the blue bollards in order to hit this right. So 2 over, 2 over, and 1 down. And now here. There we go. That is all we need. And then I have to restore the bollards in order for things to work out correctly for the remainder of the dungeon. Make sure bombs are ready because we are going to hit a familiar mid-boss here in just a moment. Surprise! Dodongos again. Let's see which way they move. Oh dear. You get that one, and you get that one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh dear. Please? No. Which way are you weirdos gonna move? There we go. Oh, come on! That's more like it. See, they move slow, but they're still very sneaky. Ta-da! The boss key. And now to run all the way back to where the boss room is hiding. So this part's kind of tedious and uneventful. It's just backtracking a bit. So time for donations. Quick way of defeating those Wizrobes without engaging them the way that you're supposed to engage them. And I'm going to go into this fight down 1 heart, which I'm okay with because I still have a safety net and I can somewhat easily route in a quick to crazy Tracy's, but I'd much rather not. And this boss, they made him slightly more difficult. They gave him a couple of additional behaviors and a few more iframes to make him a little bit more difficult to deal with here. I'm going to try to get in a few cheap early hits here with some bomb arrows, and maybe it'll work out. Nope, not going to risk it anymore. That was scary. That was pretty scary. I got a few good hits in. Wasn't the most optimized fight ever. All credit to the any percent runners out there who I know I've seen them absolutely destroy this boss before he even started doing those bottomless pits. Like Samurai Man especially. Lots of respect to what Samurai Man has done. I know Linkus has done a few good bits of runs as well. Big shout out to them for developing a lot of the really cool strats in Link's Awakening speedrunning. Okay, yep, yet again, taking advantage of all the warp points that have been opened up. All of the fantastic setups are now paying off in spades now, because I can now come over here to immediately start performing the next thing, and I'm going to ignore that secret seashell. As much as I love them, they are not a necessary part of this run, and are best left alone, unfortunately. So this is the signpost maze, and the signpost maze holds a lot of special memories in my heart, because at once I thought it was the most difficult thing ever. It didn't make any sense until I got a little bit older and realized, oh, there's an incredibly specific pattern to this, and I've been foolish for trying to memorize this by rote memorization, just trying to memorize it directly instead of realizing, oh, the signpost maze actually is very literal when it comes to the directions that it gives you. And yes, it tells you to go this way, and you think, oh, I see so many different signposts in this general direction. Well, it's not the general direction. It's literally what's parallel to the signpost. It is pretty it is algorithmic, to say the least. There's a specific way these instructions go. So do not fear if this signpost maze has ever confounded you, just like it did to me right there, where I just completely biffed it, you know, right on this recording. But that's okay. Maybe only 30 seconds cost here. There are definitely worse ways to lose time in this game, so I'll deal with that. I'll wear the egg on my face. So up here, and then stand parallel, da-da. And I was so close to... I was like maybe 2 signposts away from the end, which made that even more frustrating. Yeah. And then here. And then the one next to the rock. And then the one behind this rock. And then... Finally my reward is to go down a hole. Very interesting. And now a familiar face to anyone who's ever played Super Mario Bros. 2. He calls himself Mamu, We know him as Wart, the final boss of Super Mario Bros. 2. And he's got a funky beat. Gotta have the snare. Wonderful audience, and now I've learned the third and final song for the ocarina. Playing the song makes everything feel more alive. Whatever that means, am I right? Weirdo frog talking in code. And I'll just zip right up here to that warp point. Okay. So, what do we do with this newfound song that we just learned? Well, this innocuous-looking windmill has been hiding some stairs this entire time. Oh me, oh my. And this entire thing has been hiding a tomb for some rooster remains because, well, in Koholint society, that's just what you do. You build a tomb for your rooster who is able to fly. He deserves all of the digging by hand that must have occurred for this entire thing to exist. So now, let's see, can I warp from out of here? Pretty please let me warp from out of here because we have to go north. The Flying Rooster is essential for all that goes on for the 7th dungeon, and as usual, you guessed it, Dunpay's Shack is our favorite spot. So this is some kind of tedious movement through some places we've been before, so feel free to read some donations while I hoof my way up to the 7th dungeon. And how about I just lift up the Flying Rooster and kind of cheat my way through here. That'll do. And yeah, I'm just running past the dungeon that I conveniently ignored a while ago. And the Flying Rooster, he also teleports. Didn't you know that? So many magic powers in that one animal. And we will quickly see in a moment in the next room right above me why this rooster is so important and why the developers saw fit to create an obstacle that only a magical rooster could cross. Now, back in the Game Boy version, you could use a really interesting pause buffering trick to just jump your way through that. The old Game Boy didn't quite have the ability to easily ascertain whether you were on a floor or on a hole, so it had a really, really weird way of calculating that. So the Flying Rooster often got unfortunately ignored in a lot of cases, but that's okay. If you're playing him casually on the Game Boy versions, throw a boomerang and pick him up, then you just become an unstoppable death machine. It's really fun, I promise. And now continuing the long, arduous trek. And I have to be really careful when I get down when I get down from that ladder because I don't want to accidentally hop down that waterfall. And then I would lose a couple of minutes trying to get myself back in order from falling down in that region. didn't need that piece of power, but you know what? It's not gonna hurt that much. It's only gonna hurt the enemies and, unfortunately, me. By throwing me off my rhythm. But being powered up does make it easy to knock that buzzy beetle off the side, so I can be grateful for that. And there's a warp point hiding right there, which would normally be brought up with the shovel, but I got no time for that. Okay. Drop that key into the hole, and then comes time for the most difficult dungeon in the game. This dungeon can happily make or break a run. Execution is paramount here in the 7th dungeon because it has the craziest puzzle to be able to clear it. This dungeon starts out with 4 floors, but you have to destroy one of those floors via a very complicated mechanic. And maybe I should get over to something other than the ocarina. So, with this one key, we head up to the 2nd level of the dungeon where all the insanity happens. Now, first and foremost, big time sink here. Maybe. Can I squeeze through? Can I squeeze through? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So I get to do this the old-fashioned way. But the crux of this dungeon is taking this iron ball and chucking it at 4 stone pillars. And in chucking it at those 4 stone pillars, the 3rd floor is destroyed, and then you can actually finally make your way up to the boss room. As we will watch this all unfold, and hopefully, just hopefully, I don't do anything incredibly dumb. I'll say through life experience, I am prone to doing dumb things, and if I get a little too greedy, this dungeon will punish me. Yeah, might as well preemptively open that hole right there, because dropping the iron ball there is a little bit of a setup for later. And I can just safely drop down here. Blue bollards are down, which makes for an easy path this way. So I can head up the most important staircase. It's not the staircase to the boss room, I promise you that. This is the most important staircase in the entire dungeon. Now this Hinox here has a manipulation to warp to the instrument room, which I'm not skilled enough to do. It requires a very incredibly precise setup to mess with Link's X and Y position. But that's okay. Since I am not doing skips or glitches or anything of the sort, you know, there are certain items which I'm definitely required to get. And yes! It's much nicer to get them all in one shot. It really is. And I'm very fortunate that they somewhat quickly aligned themselves like that. Okay. So now I get to go grab the mirror shield, which its only real purpose, this mirror shield, is to get across a specific obstacle on the way to the 8th dungeon. It is unfortunately not terribly useful otherwise. Gotta manage my bollards or else none of this works. And I get to fight the mid-boss here. And this mid-boss is a little bit odd. Sometimes these little guys slip through the cracks, and it's incredibly frustrating. But normally you can just stand in one spot, keep slashing, they will come right to your sword, and you'll be done with them just like that. This is another one of those push block rooms where interesting stuff can happen, manipulating how close you can get to the chest before the game stops you from moving. So there is that. Okay, that is nice. Got the boss key, and now all actions henceforth are in service of breaking down those pillars. And sometimes these playing card suit guys, they like to get in your way. Thankfully, they have not done so yet. And this room, as a matter of risk mitigation, I'm just gonna sit in the corner and wait this out. I'm gonna play it completely safe, and I don't care if that makes me a coward, because I do not want to deal with the consequences of falling down those holes there. Because you know, it's not just a you know, the very kind usual bottomless pit, where you'll respawn immediately in that room. Now you drop down into a whole other place. So opening that, and let's get that open. So that's 2 of 4 pillars. Let's keep this going. So I can make that fall, but I can chuck this across the gap. And then I have to deal with the blue bollards again, so that's fine. I'm grown. I can deal with it. Okay, that's 3. Now, the 4th one, this is why it was incredibly important to hit the card suit guys, because this 4th one is, oh, it's not fun. And blue bollards down, which is exactly the way that I need them for when I fall down this next hole to get to the most important staircase in the 7th dungeon. Okay, now I can just... yeah, now I gotta go through the cycle again. A little bit of backtracking, but it's essential backtracking. I've done all I can in this route to minimize the amount of backtracking. So we get to take this and then chuck it over that way so that it's sitting on that side. The game, thankfully, is really good at remembering the position of the ball. And now let's go meet that ball on the other side, shall we? Now that we've already opened up the holes for it. Boom. And that chest's entire purpose is to hold, is to be able to take the hit from the hook shot, because they really did, like, maybe it's kind of like a slap in the face. If you open that chest, there's a single rupee in it. It's kind of terrible. Okay, so that should trigger a save. Just making sure. Yes, now saving. Okay, so now I can do a load here to put me back at the beginning of the dungeon so that I can hit the warp portal here, which happens to put me into the room now that the 3rd floor is collapsed. The staircase up to the boss is right over there, so it's time to go fight the boss. And maybe just as a safety bit, intended mechanic by all stretches, because it's funny that way and because it's Nintendo. If you hop on top of Goomba's heads, you will reliably get a heart out of them. So if you're in a dungeon and feeling pressed, just hop on a Goomba. That will save you. Now this eagle is incredibly chaotic. I'm just going to fight him the best I can. I'm not going to be doing anything special. No tricks, just nothing but sword swinging, so feel free to read some donations. Yep, no frills fight. So, I'm gonna get a heart. And let's go get that let's go get that 7th instrument. Keep reading those donations. Alright, now to, yet again, do some more warping to Dante's Shack. So we can crawl our way over to the 8th dungeon. A little bit of backtracking that's a little bit boring here. Retreading some of the same ground for a 3rd time. So feel free to feel free to read donations. We're going to be coming up to an interesting story point, though. So now that we have enough going on to be able to clamber our way over to the 8th dungeon entrance, this is where things get a little scary. Poor Marin is sitting up there all alone because some monsters put her there. She went off to sing to the windfish to try to get her wish granted, but unfortunately that song is called, well, Ballad of the Windfish. It's meant to wake the windfish, so the monsters naturally did not like that, so they punished her by putting her right there. They didn't want to do away with her directly, so they just punished her like that, but clearly Marin was about to have a moment with Link here, with Manic here. That poor forlorn, that dejected look on her face says she didn't get to say what she wanted to say. And Owl, yes, you are also ruining my emotions in the moment here. I was about to have a pretty lady confess her feelings to me, and you're reminding me about a quest? This is really giving me an existential crisis here. Do I really want to leave this island? Is this really the best course of action? Do I really want to go back to Hyrule? And if I do end up accomplishing my quest, doesn't that destroy the island? Am I making a bunch of lives just evaporate into the ether just for my own selfish needs? There's a lot going on. It's woven through this game. There really is. As cartoony, as childish as it might seem, there's so much going on thematically here in Link's Awakening. It's really, really impressive. It's not you aren't technically the hero of this game. You're just an existential crisis trying to deal with itself. And this is the obstacle that particular shield is for. And now, the entrance to the 8th dungeon, which has been slightly enhanced from the Game Boy original. They actually made this a challenge. Let's see here. That will do. Yeah, because previously you played the song, and then that turtle's head was fully exposed, and you just hack and slash, and you win. But oh no, now the stone is there, acting as a layer of protection for the turtle. And uh-oh. Trying not to be too reckless here. I'm already feeling a little bit too cocky. I better calm myself. I'm trying to preserve this crazy Tracy potion for the final fight, which is incredibly difficult. Because Dungeon 8 is actually fairly trivial once you know the specific shortcuts through it. Normally crawling through Dungeon 8 involves visiting every room, and it involves a route that makes you leave the dungeon and come back in. But we are not going to concern ourselves with any of those things. We are going to take the shortest possible route through this dungeon and conserve all of our resources. And yes, I'm fully aware this Hinox up here is the key to a fast Dungeon 8, and there's a specific, somewhat complicated setup that goes along with that, but I'm not glitching. I'm doing this honest. Just have to make sure that I shout out and give respect to all the any % runners who continue to inspire me to get better, even though I don't run this game the same way that they do. And hey, a familiar face, and he's only going to take half the amount of effort to defeat. And let's see if this Vire will cooperate as well. He very much did. I got to go right next to the key drop, and now that I have Mambo's Mambo, I can continually warp back to the entrance, not even have to worry about using the save and reload function. It's pretty sweet. And let me reload on some magic. That's essential to the game here. I also need to make sure I'm very tight on managing my arrows as well. And that right there is yet another example of one of these deterministic rooms where you want to try to get in a jump as quickly as possible. I really need to stop trying to be heroic with that jump right there, and I end up losing myself time. But that room that I was just in, you can squeeze in a quick jump so you can land right on top of where the stair spawns. Save yourself a few seconds, even though I just, of course, immediately negated those few seconds by making a ill-advised jump. And here's our good friend, weird dolphin thing. I don't remember what exactly this thing's called. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nope, my turn now. I thought we were playing fetch. Come on now. Uh-oh. My hubris got the better of me. Okay, that wasn't so bad. Yeah, the essential gimmick of this dungeon are these Roombas. Can I say Roomba? The essential gimmick of this dungeon are these Roomba-like things, these floor creator machines, that solve puzzles in the rooms in which they exist. It might seem like they help you just get from A to B, but oh no, they unlock quite a bit more. And in addition, the entire key to this dungeon functioning is that hidden switch right there. If that switch is not pressed in any meaningful way, then you block yourself from making progress after defeating the mid-boss of this dungeon. So definitely do all you can to make sure you hunt down that switch, or else you will cause yourself a lot of pain. A lot of pain. So next part. is to take a little shortcut. Normally, one goes to this key and goes right and makes a kind of a counterclockwise action, but not I. Not I. Fortune favors the bold and those willing to jump over some lava to open up a hidden door. Okay, perfect. I've never gotten that statue hit on the first try, ever. I have no idea what's going on here. I'm going to make a little pit stop here in the room just south because need to make sure that my items are right. 14 arrows, perfect. I need to not use any arrows from here until the very final confrontation. And I believe that might be the last of the small keys that I pick up. I do believe. So let's go fight us a mid-boss, shall we? That was scary. I made like 8 faces all in one go there. But yeah, because of hitting that switch, those blue bollards right there are down. So I can easily grab the chest later when I defeat this boss. Now this guy is dangerous because he's basically got 3 attacks. He's got the jabs. And then he's got a wind up, which hopefully he will do shortly. Oh yeah, that's the super wind up that sounds like a tire spinning out. This super windup that sounds like a tire spinning out will launch you to the beginning of the dungeon, which you definitely don't want. That super wind up haymaker right there is just very powerful. And thankfully he just punched right into my sword and ended his own life, so I'm okay with that. So let's go claim the item that defeats this dungeon's boss, which is the fire rod. And you will find out very soon why it's very silly that the fire rod is the reason why it's so silly. So let's get our warp on back to the dungeon entrance. And let's beat feet over to the first place where this fire rod can be useful, which is that staircase immediately to my right. And sorry, Goombas, you're gonna have to roast. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. No, really, that's what Goombas actually are. They're basically chestnuts. Alright, now I have to fight yet another familiar face. Except in a much more difficult arena. An arena where I don't necessarily have the luxury that I did over in the 4th dungeon. Oh, come on. That was ridiculous. Just gotta do the little song and dance. Don't run away. Come meet your fate. You deserve this and you know it. Alright, now I can claim the boss key if I play this puzzle correctly, which I have been playing correctly for the better part of the past 27 years. really embarrassing to biff it, but you know what? You just gotta recover. All right, nightmare key. So let's head over to the nightmare, shall we? Yeah, I'll say casually, this dungeon is a little bit crazy because it emulates it kind of emulates its older sibling in the original Legend of Zelda by having a bunch of crisscrossing staircases, which can confuse the heck out of nearly anyone. So I don't blame people who casually have a hard time reasoning out this dungeon, because you almost have to write stuff down. It's so nightmarish sometimes. And I'm hoping I can get. I was hoping I could get the get a one-shot here, but I'm gonna have to jump this twice or 3 times. I'm gonna have to keep jumping until I get this right. Okay, now I have a clear landing spot. Right through there. And now I have to be really good at firing off in angles, because I will be using the fire rod to defeat this lava monster. Yeah, this game saw fit to give you the fire rod to defeat Hothead, because the best thing to do is to fight fire with fire, I guess. And I think it's like 4 hits now, or 3. Yeah, 3. Okay, so I need to make a quick pit stop down in Mabe Village. Right after this dungeon, so that I can get the, because I kind of neglected to get the directions to the Windfish's maze. So right now, 2:19:30. Maybe we are tracking to about a 2:35, if all goes well, of course. There's still a lot left that could totally torch my run. Ooh, saved by the teleport. I'm gonna go hit the Cuckoo Prairie warp point, so I can go hang out to the library. This was one of the essential reasons. One of the essential reasons for going and grabbing. For going and finishing the trading quest, not only because of the dungeon access it allowed, but because the end result item, the magnifying lens, is the one and only way to read the book that gives you the answer for how to navigate the Windfish's lair. So let me go scribble this down real quick. Dark Secrets and Mysteries of Koholint. Do we really want to read it? Why, yes, we do. Round and around the passages of the egg, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 rights. Up, left, up, up. Okay, that's how it gets to be. And now that that's been scribbled down, let's move onward, shall we? The last thing I have to do is make sure that I finish off the 4th dungeon, which is conveniently has a tiny spotlight on the map. And that's why I opened up this warp portal earlier, because it will be essential for quickly re-entering the 4th dungeon. So let's go for a swim, shall we? So when we enter this dungeon, we do properly get to pick up where we left off by leveraging the warp portal here. Okay, and moving up the way that was originally intended. And now this room is important because it teaches us about how to deal with another room. So, top right, top left, bottom right, middle. Okay, so outside going in. Got it. So now I get to do the same here. After getting some of these water striders out of the way. And of course, stepping right on the spot where the stairs spawn. Oop. Oh, let's try that again. There we go. Cleared that room the way I should. And now, that's nice and easy boss key. And now, by splitting the dungeon and making sure that I have both the bomb and bow and arrow, a skip that was a very minor skip. It means not getting one small key. A minor skip that was actually possible back in the Game Boy version without doing any of that. Can hop across that gap right there. Not sure why they left that in, but that's a nice little thing to assist experienced players who know what they're doing. Yeah, now here in the remake, you have to knock out those pots with a bomb arrow in order to proceed. So this boss is just tedious and boring. Glad that I'm powered up so that this fight doesn't have to last as long as it normally would, and I don't have to worry about anything like a piece of power to make myself stronger for it. I can just slash away. Okay. Oh, good. That's the side I prefer the heart to spawn on. Okay. Now there's something that's about to happen here after I get out of this dungeon, and I really hope it doesn't happen to me. This could kind of make or break things. This could cost me those additional 2 minutes, and I hope it doesn't. Because in the 1.01 update, they seem to have fixed a thing that might force the ghost quest upon me after I warp to the spot that I need to go to. But since I've never touched the place on the map, that technically is also a trigger, maybe I'll be okay. So we'll see what happens when I try to warp to the Dampe warp one more time. If I have to do the ghost quest, then I'll do the ghost quest, but I'll find a way to mitigate it in the future. In a certain way, beating the 4th dungeon is a trigger for the ghost quest, but I'm hoping that I can still skip over that. And we're clear. No ghost. However, if I die during the final battle, the ghost appears. And if I want to retry the final battle, then stuff happens. So now I have all of the instruments. It's time to go do the final battle. Let's get that ocarina set for the Ballad of the Windfish. And cutscene. Try not to cry. It's a beautiful song. I've been talking so much I can't cry. I'm out of liquid. Oh boy. Oh boy. This isn't the end. Not by a long shot. As per Zelda tradition, there's one final showdown. And I get to fall down this hole intentionally, fully by design. So let's recall those instructions to the right 4 times. Then up to the left. And then 2 more ups. This is actually pretty favorable because I can spend a lot of time running. Oh boy, final showdown, and I have 13 arrows, which is 3 more than the mandatory minimum. This fight always scares me, especially a certain portion, a certain form, the form that resembles Ganon. I'll say that much. But I'm just going to take a deep breath, let this play out, and hope for the best. That's 3. Very good. Simple first phase. Now, this phase can be troublesome. The first one is free. That's always nice. It's everything after this where things can get weird. 2. 2 in a row. Alright. Can I get 3 and 4? Nope. There's 3. 1 more, and we're done. There we go. Great RNG. Very great RNG, only 1 bad pattern on Aghanim there. And the Revenge of Moldorm, best part about Moldorm is this Moldorm technically has no iframes. So you can just go, go, go. Only 1 little sword slash when he's in super thrashing mode, which is nice. So far so good, but this is where problems begin. I'm no good at this fight. It's unfortunate. Back in the originals, this fight was a lot easier, but now Ganon remains invulnerable for most of the fight, unless you can really do well at separating him from his trident. This is why Crazy Tracy's potion is invaluable for saving a run, among many other things, because sometimes a fight is just terrible. I did not want to have to go through another cycle, my word. And then just a few spin slashes. And now it's time for the final form of the boss. Music goes quiet. We get all dramatic. Final form of the boss here. Back in the originals, this final boss was kind of entertaining because, believe it or not, you could one-shot him with the boomerang, which is something that the magnifying glass allows. There's an NPC on the beach where we, of course, no longer traveled that imparts the boomerang. But they've eliminated the one-shot kill for this boss. So time's coming up here in a second. As soon as I cross some stairs that are going to appear here in a second, is where time stops. Where I will no longer assume control of the player. So let me just get up those stairs, and we call that time. So I was incredibly, only so much can appear in this tiny little box that I'm in right now. I was absolutely losing my mind for the final, everything from Dungeon 7 onward. I was as paranoid as could be. Because that time right there is a PB. I don't know if I could ever call it a world record because it's kind of a weird category. If I don't even know if it's a category that could technically be allowed. But here it is, as recorded, with me commentating perfectly live. No deaths even. So all dungeons, no stealing, no glitches, no major skips, no deaths. Five things accomplished here in 2 hours, 32 minutes, 17 seconds. So for anyone who may have watched this entire run, bless you very much. I'm incredibly grateful that you may have stuck around for this entire run. I try to use all of my knowledge of this game. It is my favorite Zelda game. I wanted to just try to impart that love of the game as much as I could. And we're going to have a really, really nice, precious credit sequence going on here that in the end involves a very special bonus at the end that only happens if you've completed it without dying. Also, I forgot his name, but now I quickly Googled it, and I can also give a shout out to TGH, who ran the 80% category of this game back in AGDQ of this year. Really, really super impressive run to bust out all those tricks and beat the game in an hour 17. I'll respect to TGH for continuing to be an inspiration in the Link's Awakening community. I know I'm not really a part of the Link's Awakening community. I just kind of developed this run all on my lonesome here. Just took my best memories of the game, analyzed the game the best I could, and this is what came of it. So I think I'll be quiet now and let the credits roll. And thank you, judging panel, whoever's watching this yet again. Obviously, not the kind of run perhaps that makes it, but you may need to be filling a certain gap of time. I will say yet again, now that I've hit a PB here, there are definitely some things that could have held me back, but typically my runs stay between 232 and 240, at worst case 245. So if you want to block things out for a worst case scenario, I'd say 245 is the target, and I'm very likely to exceed that target. So here's the run, and thanks anyone else who might watch this.